Dear Dr. Botteras, my dear President Yücel, dear member of the German Bundestag Thomas Barais, Your Excellency Ambassador Zorc, esteemed guests. On behalf of the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany in Ankara, the German-Turkish Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and İki Policy Interface Turkey, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to Climate Talks. Today, we gather to discuss one of the most important transitions of our time. This dialogue brings together voices from government, business, and international cooperations. We will start with opening remarks and a keynote speech. After that, we will have two panel discussions focusing on industrial decarbonization and carbon markets. Before moving to our opening speech, I would like to kindly mention that esteemed Minister of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change of Turkey is unfortunately unable to join us today due to his busy schedule. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Mareike Botteras to the stage to deliver her opening speech.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear Ambassador Zorc, dear Mrs. Yücel, dear Mr. Barais, distinguished colleagues, partners and guests. It is an honor to join you here at the Climate Day, which is part of the first IKI workshop Turkey. On behalf of the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, Climate Action, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. Let me begin by thanking our host and all those who have contributed to this important event, the IKI Interface Policy Project, the German Embassy, the AHK Turkey, and of course our Turkish partners. We are truly delighted to see so many representatives from Turkish ministries, implementing agencies, and partner organizations joining us today. The rich participation we've seen here is a clear signal of the momentum building in Turkey and the region for transformative action on climate and biodiversity. Since its founding in 2008, the International Climate Initiative, or short the IKI, has worked to support ambitious climate and biodiversity action in developing and emerging countries. Turkey was among the very first IKI partner countries, and we are proud of this long-standing partnership. Following Turkey's ratification of the Paris Agreement in 2021, our collaboration gained a new momentum. With the new climate law adopted this year and the introduction of an emission trading system under preparation, Turkey is moving forward on key climate reforms. This section focuses on a sector that is central to both our economies and the global climate transition, the industry. Heavy industries plays a vital economic role but also contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emission. The path to net zero must go through deep carbonization of industrial processes, innovation and clean technologies, and new reforms of public-private cooperation. Germany and Turkey are both taking steps to support this transformation. On the German side, we are proud that the IKI is helping drive impact here in Turkey, for example, through our upcoming project to support decarbonization on the cement sector, developed with EBRD and Guidehouse under the Mitigation Action Facility. We also know that technical projects alone are not enough. We need strong political dialogue and coordination to deliver impact at scale. This is why we launched the IKI interface project in Turkey last year in 2024. It plays a key role in aligning project work with national priorities, supporting the KUMLA, our high-level bilateral climate environmental dialogue, which is taking place tomorrow, and helping to connect public policy, investment frameworks, and implementation on the ground. The goal is clear: help turn policy ambition into real-world transformation, including the industry. Turkey is positioning itself as a regional leader in the industry decarbonization with initiatives like the Turkey Industrial Decarbonization Investment Platform, or short TTIP, setting ambitious targets for investment and CO2 reduction. Germany is ready to continue and deepen our cooperation in this area through finance, technical expertise, and political dialogue. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to today's discussion and hearing Turkey's version of the industrial transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Botteras. Now, I would like to invite Bige Yücel, President of AHK Turkey, to deliver her opening speech.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency Ambassador Sorg, dear member of the German Bundestag Thomas Barreis, distinguished guests. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to the climate talks organized by the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany, AHK Türkiye, and IKI Policy Interface Türkiye. Climate change is no longer a distant concern. It is a defining challenge of our time. It compels us to rethink how we produce, how we consume and grow. The path toward net zero requires not only technological innovation, but also deep collaboration between industry, government, and civil society. At AHK Türkiye, we see this transformation not as a burden, but as an opportunity, as a unique opportunity to modernize production, to enhance competitiveness, and build a more resilient and sustainable economy. Our mission has always been to connect businesses and ideas across borders. Today, this connection must also drive climate action. Germany and Turkey, they are sharing a long history of economic partnership. Now we have the chance to make this partnership a catalyst for green transformation by exchanging expertise, aligning standards, and fostering innovation in every sector, from manufacturing to energy and digitalization. I am very delighted to see companies and policymakers represented here today. Your engagement demonstrates that the green transition is not a distant goal, but a journey we are already taking together. So, over the course of today's discussions, we will explore how industry can decarbonize effectively, how policy can accelerate this process, and how carbon markets can bridge ambition with real action. Let us use this platform in inspired collaboration and to turn our shared vision together with you of a climate-neutral future into concrete steps. So, on behalf of AHK Türkiye, I would like to thank again Your Excellency Sorg, dear Barreis, and all of our esteemed guests for joining us today, and also our partners for their close cooperation. Hoş geldiniz.
Thank you very much, dear President. And now, it's my honor to invite Your Excellency Ambassador Zorg, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany in Ankara.
Liebe Frau Boderas, lieber Herr Bareis, dear Billet, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure to welcome you today here to our climate talks. At a time when our world faces multiple and complex challenges, the climate crisis remains the one that most fundamentally threatens our common future. And I want to support what Bilget just said. It is so important that on climate, we leave our silos and come together from the economy, from think tanks, from administrations, from companies, and from, of course, all walks of life to discuss how we can tackle this extremely important challenge. Germany remains convinced that industrial decarbonization is not merely an environmental imperative, but also an opportunity, a catalyst for innovation, competitiveness, and sustainable prosperity. Today's exchange will allow us to explore how diplomacy, how technology and partnership can jointly advance this transformation. Germany and Turkey share a common vision, a future defined by sustainability and environmental stewardship. Both our nations have unequivocally committed to achieving climate neutrality, a goal that demands both ambition and resolute action. We recognize that the challenge of the climate change transcends borders. Turkey's willingness to proactively engage with the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, is particularly noteworthy. We view this as a testament to Turkey's confidence in the European Union and as embrace of the European market. The strength of our partnership extends far beyond environmental concerns. The economic ties between Germany and Turkey are deeply interwoven, forming a robust network of trade, investment, and innovation. Our bilateral trade volume exceeds 50 billion euros annually by now, a figure that speaks volumes about the mutual benefits we derive from our relationship. German companies, particularly those specializing in wind energy, are playing a vital role in Turkey's transition to a cleaner energy mix. Their expertise and innovation are contributing significantly to the decarbonization of Turkey's energy production, and we are proud to be a part of this transformative process. This is a wonderful example of how German ingenuity and Turkish implementation can create a powerful synergy. Ladies and gentlemen, collaboration is not a one-way street. We in Germany recognize the wealth of knowledge and hands-on mentality that exists here in Turkey. We are eager to learn from Turkey's unique approaches to ramp up new and innovative industries, and we acknowledge the ingenuity of the Turkish people in finding innovative solutions to complex challenges. We must actively listen to one another, and I invite you to do so during this event. We share best practices and foster a culture of continuous improvement. So please let us embrace the spirit of open dialogue and mutual respect, recognizing that our combined strengths are far greater than the sum of their parts. It's now my pleasure to invite Thomas Bareis, Member of Parliament, to the stage to address us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your inspiring words, Your Excellency. We are pleased to welcome Thomas Bareis, member of the German Bundestag, to deliver the keynote speech.
Ja, sehr geehrte Frau Botschafterin, meine sehr verehrten Damen, meine Herren, liebe Gäste, ich freue mich sehr, dass ich heute hier sein darf.
I have the pleasure of translating. Please bear with me, it is not my first profession, but...
Ich werde Sie heute auf Deutsch begrüßen, weil ich erst vor wenigen Minuten erfahren habe, dass ich heute hier eine kleine Keynote halten darf.
The speech will be in German because it's a little bit short notice, but he's very happy to be able to join us and help open this event.
Und ich weiß, dass auch viele von Ihnen unsere Landessprache Deutsch sehr, sehr gut können. Deshalb möchte ich Sie auch weiterhin dabei auch unterstützen, dass Sie die deutsche Sprache auch weiterhin hoffentlich gut dann auch verstehen.
Recognize that there are many here in the room who also master the German language as well, and encourage you to contribute into the conversations as well.
Ich fühle mich sehr geehrt, dass ich heute hier sein darf, und ich glaube, dass diese Runde hier eine ganz, ganz wichtige auch Runde ist, um unsere Zusammenarbeit weiter zu unterstützen.
I'm very pleased to be here and to take a moment to recognize our cooperation.
Ich bin als deutscher Bundestagsabgeordneter schon seit vielen, vielen Jahren hier in der Türkei zu Gast. Ich bin oft in Ankara, oft in Istanbul, oft auch in anderen Teilen Ihres wunderschönen Landes, und ich glaube, dass wir eine unglaublich starke Möglichkeit haben, viele Kooperationen, auch gerade im Energiesektor und bei der Frage von Climate Change auch zu tätigen.
As a member of the German Parliament, I've had the honor of visiting this country several times, cities like Istanbul and Ankara, and to see the fruitful collaboration, particularly in areas such as energy and energy efficiency.
Ich kann mich gut erinnern, vor einigen Jahren hatte ich auch die Ehre, gemeinsam mit dem damaligen Minister Philipp Rösler die deutsch-türkische Energiepartnerschaft zu gründen.
And I also had the pleasure, together with the minister, to found the German-Turkish Energy Partnership.
Ich kann mich noch gut erinnern, dass ich als damals vor fast 18, 19 Jahren zum ersten Mal in die Türkei kam als Bundestagsabgeordneter, damals den Energieminister Taner Yildiz getroffen habe, und damals die Frage aufkam, wie wir im Bereich der Solarenergie vorankommen können.
It was roughly 18 years ago that I had the pleasure of visiting, and the question of solar energy was brought up.
Und damals kam Taner Yildiz auf mich zu und meinte, er wäre ganz stolz, dass die Türkei 500 Megawatt Solarenergie aufbauen möchte.
And I was approached with the suggestion to build
500 Megawatt.
500 megawatts of energy.
Und habe ich gesagt, Deutschland möchte 2000 Megawatt aufbauen.
And I offered 2000.
Aber eigentlich ist die 2000 Megawatt wäre viel besser in der Türkei investiert, weil die Türkei hat ein Dreifaches an Sonnenstunden als Deutschland. Deshalb war immer wieder auch die Frage, wie wir besser auch in der Türkei Solarenergie aufbauen können, weil hier ist jede Megawattstunde besser investiert, weil hier auch viel, viel mehr Sonnenenergie auch vorhanden ist.
But I suggested that it would be much more fruitful to invest here in Turkey and to build them up in Turkey because they are much more productive.
Was ich damit sagen will, ich glaube, wir brauchen dort Investitionen, wo sie am besten geeignet sind. Ich denke, dass wir dort investieren müssen, wo sie am besten geeignet sind, wo wir am besten Effizienz auch dann entsprechend auch erzielen können.
We need to invest where it is most fruitful and can be the most productive.
Und ich glaube, dass wir auch da gemeinsam stark sein können, wo wir immer die besten auch Ideen haben und wo wir wirklich auch die besten Vorkommnisse entsprechend vorfinden werden.
And we'll be the most fruitful where we join our strengths and work together.
Und gerade hier sehe ich für Deutschland und die Türkei ein ganz, ganz großes Potenzial.
And I believe the German-Turkish partnership has a lot of potential.
Denn unsere Ziele sind enorm hoch. Wir wollen bis 2045 in Deutschland klimaneutral werden.
Our goals are quite high. In Germany, we are aiming to be climate neutral by 2040.
Und das wird eine große Herausforderung sein.
It will be a big challenge.
Gerade in einer Zeit auch, wo wir merken, dass gerade auch unsere Wirtschaft unter enormem Druck steht.
And we are recognizing that our economy is under a lot of pressure.
Wir haben jetzt 3 Jahre in Deutschland von Rezession, also sprich, wir haben kein Wachstum in Deutschland.
We currently are experiencing years with a recession or little growth in Germany.
Und gerade auch die Türkei hat derzeit auch wirtschaftliche Probleme, denke ich.
Also in this country, in Turkey, there are economic challenges.
Deshalb müssen wir umso mehr die Kraftanstrengungen stärken, nochmal, dass wir gemeinsam unsere Wettbewerbsfähigkeit stärken und bessern.
That is why it is even more important to put our mutual strength together and work on this challenge.
Und trotzdem klimafreundlicher werden und auch effizienter werden.
And of course to also be climate friendly and efficient.
Und klimafreundlich heißt in erster Linie, dass wir einfach auch die nächsten Jahre die Rohstoffe, die wir haben, besser einsetzen, auch effizienter einsetzen.
Climate friendly means that we need to use our natural resources more efficiently.
Das heißt, wir brauchen die besten Maschinen, die besten Anlagen.
To build the best machines and the best
auch gerade im Automobilsektor gibt es auch hier sehr, sehr viele Potenziale.
and in the energy sector.
Im Automobilsektor auch sehr viel Potenzial.
in the automotive sector.
Und deshalb haben wir auch da in beiden Bereichen auch, glaube ich, unsere Stärken, die wir gemeinsam auch nutzen sollten.
That's why I encourage us to strengthen our mutual contribution.
Und weil ich weiß, dass viele von Ihnen auch gerade in diesem Sektor sehr, sehr stark und gut unterwegs sind, möchte ich Ihnen auch danken für Ihre Arbeit für Klimaschutz und für Klimaeffizienz, aber auch gerade für unsere Wirtschaft.
It's my understanding that many of you are active in exactly these sectors and with these challenges, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your work.
Und deshalb wünsche ich dieser Konferenz viel Erfolg und vor allen Dingen auch eine fruchtbare Diskussion.
And I'd like to wish you much success and fruitful conversations this afternoon.
Und ich hoffe sehr, dass es auch dazu beiträgt, dass unsere beiden Länder auch näher zusammenkommen.
And I hope that it leads to bringing our countries even closer together.
Es kam ja auch zur Sprache, dass wir schon eine sehr, sehr lange Historie haben, sehr, sehr lange geschichtliche Verbindungen haben.
We already have a very long history and a long mutual journey.
Und ich glaube, dass es dieses Thema auch nochmal ein großes Potenzial bietet, dass wir unsere beiden großen Nationen zusammenbringen, dass wir auch eine gute und erfolgreiche Zukunft haben.
And I am excited that this is helping bring both of our important countries together to have a large impact.
Deshalb Ihnen alles Gute, eine gute Konferenz und ich freue mich auf eine gemeinsame, starke, friedliche Zukunft. Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. Have a great conference and to a strong and peaceful future.
Dankeschön.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barais, for your valuable insight. Can you please stay on the stage for a moment as we will be presenting your certificate? I would like to invite Your Excellency Ambassador Sorg and our President Bige Yücel to present the certificate. We will now take a short coffee break and meet back here at 3 p.m. Sertifika verilecek ya. Sertifika verilecek ya. Gamze Hanım'ın önceden söylemeyi unuttum ben. Siz istiyorsanız söyleyin. Our guests, welcome back. Our first panel will explore how industry can successfully decarbonize and how policy, technology, and innovation can work together to make this happen. Dear moderator and all the speakers, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, dear panelists, and please first, before starting the first panel, please allow me to thank the keynote speeches of Excellency Ambassador Sorg and also Mr. Baez for their insightful speeches. So it's my honor to moderate the first panel. So when we talk about the decarbonization of the industry, I believe the three forces move together. Regulations, policies for sure, innovations, and the leadership. And when we talk about the leadership, please consider it not just a title, but it is the courage to take the action before the last deadline, before the last call, because as today, representative of AHK and also the Mercedes-Benz, as you can imagine, the automotive industry is under tremendous transformation. So let's be honest, without a clear policy push, a few of us volunteer to take the action. And if we are slowing down in the taking actions, for sure innovation slow down. And that's why policies, regulations, and also the incentives are reinforcing one another. That gives us the strategic framework to focus for us, for the industry and the companies, and that bridges to competitiveness. So when we just look about the WIPO patent registrations, talking mainly in the automotive and also the transportation industry, sure, it peaked in the last 5 to 6 years, but mainly filed by the Asian companies. So and also that kind of patent certifications mirrors the R&D investments. And in that kind of technological shift means also competitiveness shift. So that's why I know a few from the audience that I would like to ask whether we have enough of number from the finance and accounting department with us in here, because I love to ask this question, because mainly in that kind of sustainability and ESG talks, we are not that much from the accounting background. I mean, I'm a normally trained lawyer, but what I would like to highlight is that this is not a compliance project from environmental perspective. It is rather a cost accounting and investing in the efficiency. Because in companies, where we will explore more with my panelists, that we decide on from the accounting perspective to implement the solar panel, to invest our water treatment system, or even buying carbon certificates. So that's why this must be considered from the financial impact together with the compliance aspect also. And in Mercedes-Benz, we described the transformation with the three-part formula, because we can have the product, we can have the infrastructure, and it depends on the customer behavior. And if one of the elements in the formula is zero, as we all know from our first grade mathematics class, the result will be zero. So that's why it reinforces one another, and together with the holistic regulations and incentives to shift the customer behavior, to shift the industry behavior, transformation only prevails like that. So that's why today we will be exploring 4 different perspectives, how policy and innovations and also competitiveness reinforce one another. So please join me welcoming my panelists. First, Andreas Radl. He is the general manager of EOT TESMAC, representing the practical side of industrial decarbonization. And Ms. Elif Berrak Taşyürek, sorry for the seating arrangement is different. She's head of department for the EU Single Market and Green Deal in Turkish Ministry of Trade. She always supports us in new legislations in many platforms. Ms. Rachel Ahrens, you all know by the keynote speech. Thank you again for the translation. International Climate Initiative under Ministry of German Federal Government, and Dr. Neşen Sürmeli Anaç, Associated Director in Guidehouse, advising on the integration of energy, infrastructure and innovation. So, may I start with you, Andreas? Because you are producing the robust fasteners and the screws embedded highly with the steel. And as I know very well, you are a supplier for many automotive companies. And in the automotive industry, normally the procurement duration is like 7 to 8 years. So you need to forecast about the 7 years prices from today. And no doubt to say about the effect of CBAM. And everybody in the room, I think, looking for any inspiration how to reduce the emission in the Scope 3. So you are in the middle of everything. So can you tell us about your company's journey in decarbonization, and also what kind of parameters you implement in your new decision-making process? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. As you can see, my name is Andreas Radl. I'm general manager of the EOD company in Turkey. EOD is a German company, roughly 4,500 employees, producing fasteners. And here in Turkey, we are 300 people with 2 factories producing screws, mainly for automotive industry. So EOD's way to, or road to net zero started roughly 6 years ago. It became obvious that there will come one day regulations regarding CO2 reduction. And the good thing is what you called leadership or courage. We are a private-owned company, brother and a sister owning the company, and they say their principle is we only have one planet. So there was no need to convince them to do something for that. That helps a lot. So what does it mean, or what did it mean for the coming years? There was a certain, they were ready to accept that some investments for climate neutral manufacturing procedures, for example, will have a longer payback time as ordinary normal machines or infrastructure. So there was the acceptance to accept that. My owner once told me, Andreas, for decades we were using the environment as a free resource. We were living in accordance to the free rider principle. And now, and we should accept. So that was the general principles, and now let's see what we can do. Technical-wise, we used everything you can imagine, photovoltaic systems, reusage of heat, more smart machineries with less energy consumption. We have a very high demand for electricity, for example. And over the years, the last 6 years, we improved almost everything of that. Also in Turkey, in the whole EOD group, we are producing in 21 countries. Here in Tekirdağ is by far the biggest photovoltaic on a factory roof in the whole group. It makes sense here. But that was not everything. Then there was a common target for us, and that was until 2035 we are climate neutral. We know, meanwhile, we cannot do that. We will not be ready until 2035. And now we come what you just mentioned, and that is regarding the scopes into the European regulations or German regulations. Scope 1 and Scope 2, that is your own fireplace. You can optimize everything technical possible. That's what we did. But the biggest impact is for us the so-called Scope 3. It means everything every material and every service you purchase. And that is 80% of our CO2 emission. And we are producing screws. Screws are made by 100% from steel. And the steel production is emitting huge amounts of CO2. And to change that, for example, from a coal-fired plant to a hydrogen plant, that is a physical alternative will take decades and billions of investment. That cannot happen overnight. Although R&D in this sector is running high since years. You can also see with the numbers of patents in this area. But this is not possible until 2035 for us. We know that. And we accept that. So we try to do everything possible until then. We accept that there is a price tag coming with that. But as Gamze said, our main customer industry is automotive, and there is a certain kind of price sensitivity. And to justify a certain % of higher prices by our manufacturing technologies is not so very much accepted. So we have to keep competitive, although the circumstances around are more difficult now. Also for a good purpose, but it is more difficult. Because we accepted there is a price tag coming with that. Now we are here in Turkey. Turkey is not under the rules of the European Commission, but it is outside the European Union, so there is an adjustment mechanism becoming financially valid starting from next year, the CBAM, cross-border adjustment mechanism. And a lot of people I spoke with are doing panicking because how much will it cost? I was sitting in negotiations with customers for automotive projects, and a car in the market is in for 7 years approximately, including facelifts. So these negotiations happen years before the start of production, because all the R&D needs to be done and so on. I was sitting in Germany ready for blue ink of a big contract, and the head of purchasing said, stop, we don't know what's going to happen with CBAM. CBAM itself, I think, is not the problem. The non-predictable for that is the problem, and that stops industries. And that is the only thing I would complain about. We need more clear rules, and we need them ASAP. We cannot wait any longer. We have an idea, roughly, ceteris paribus, with the values of today, we know roughly how much it will cost. And you know it's not the exporter who pays, it will be the importer who pays. And we came to numbers which will not be a game changer. Few percentages. Not so bad. But it's depending on your product. But the problem is that nobody knows exactly what will be the values. And officially all that started in 2026. And that's not so far away anymore, 2 more months. So that's a little bit of the problem. It is more the uncertainty in the market than the cost itself. But as our owner said, okay, it is as it is. We are not the only one in the market. We have to live with that somehow. And the good thing is, for example, the photovoltaic system which we installed when we built a new factory 2-3 years ago was, from the pure microeconomical point of view, not sensible. Why is that? Electricity from the public grid in Turkey is not expensive. In comparison to Europe, it's cheap. Financing costs are high. So photovoltaic to calculate as a success story is difficult. We made it anyway for the reason I said before. Now, after July, I could take 35% of my electricity demand from my roof. That made me smiling. So there's always a good end, yeah, although it's a little bit difficult at the moment. All right?
Thank you very much. And totally share the same feelings, no doubt to say. And as you mentioned, Andreas, where you left the word that more than ever, I believe the industry needs the regulations predictability, but not just the targets, together with the consistency on all fits. And when it comes to competitiveness, it has 2 sides. Yes, the end product, our competitor in the market, but as Andreas mentioned, if you are producing in Turkey, you need to tell the story about why still we have the competitiveness to keep producing in here. So that's why I would like to lead the questions to you, Berrak Hanım, because you rely on the single market and the Green Deal for a long time. That is truly related with the Turkish competitiveness, especially from the export point of view. So can you tell us about what is the upcoming regulations about the Green Deal? And we talk about the CBAM, but also I kindly ask you to dedicate some time about the circular economy, which is in the horizon also, that affects how we produce.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to the event, to have the opportunity to reflect our vision about green transition of Turkey. As for those who doesn't know, as Ministry of Trade, we are coordinating the Green Deal Action Plan of Turkey, which was adopted in 2021. So basically, what we are trying to do is we are trying to focus on every single aspect of green transition in the EU. Being a customs union partner, even though we are not a member of the European Union, we have high integrated value chains with the EU. So every legislation, regulation that has been done within the perspective of Green Deal is actually affecting the trade and the economy. And affecting our customs union relationship. Therefore, we have the aim to follow the EU regulation and trying to adopt them in line with our national priorities. So within that perspective, actually one of the important policy that we are following is of course CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, because that's of course affecting our trade with the EU, not only in terms of the sector itself, the steel, aluminium, and cement, but also also important for as inputs of several other sectors, because it will certainly bring certain cost effects. And actually, we know that CBAM is going to be effective in the beginning of next year, and the Omnibus regulation has been just published in the official journal of the EU. So currently what we are trying to do as Ministry of Trade is first, during the period of the reporting period, the pilot phase of CBAM, we attached attention to increasing awareness of our sector, and also of course our ministries developed certain policies and strategies for the decarbonization of these sectors. And we put attention to keep dialogue with the European Commission in order to decrease the negative effects of CBAM, because we know, and many other third countries are raising certain concerns, because even though CBAM is designed as a mirror of ETS, it does have certain discrepancies between ETS. Certain facilities below the threshold are not within the scope of ETS, but it doesn't apply to CBAM. And also the recent 50 tons threshold that aim to bring exemption to SMEs in the EU also doesn't affect our SMEs in Turkey. Also, there are concerns about renewable energy investments, because we do have a legislation that give the possibility for the sectors to make renewable energy not directly linked to their facilities, but in other areas. But these investments currently doesn't count on actual emission calculations in terms of CBAM. So there are many other points that we raise many times in our dialogue with the CBAM, with the Commission in terms of CBAM. And we had just actually recently established a regular platform with the European Commission, CBAM Working Group, in order to discuss and raise our concerns within that perspective. I agree with Andreas. There's so much uncertainty. Given the 2 months period before the implementation period, we still don't know how to calculate embedded emissions. We still don't know how the third country carbon emissions paid in third countries or the free allocations will be calculated in terms of CBAM obligations. And also there is another point that we also closely follow is the Commission's work on extension the CBAM scope to downstream sectors of steel and aluminium. These will also affect many sectors. So all these are closely followed by us. But of course, even though when we say green transition, we always focus on CBAM, but it's not only CBAM. There's actually, as you have pointed out, there is a circular economy point of view, which is actually more complex than a carbon border adjustment mechanism because it involves many other elements, not only about calculating the emissions, but you need to focus on the raw material you use, chemicals you use, how you're going to use your water and resource efficiency, and how the customer is going to use the product, how long it will use it, if it's possible to recycle it or if it is possible to repair it, and how the policies is going to be shaped in the waste collection and treatment perspective. So it's really important, and we see that there are many legislation coming up. Many of them has been adopted, like the on packaging and on construction material and on batteries, which directly affect the automotive sector. There is other coming up for the circular design of automotive sector. All these will bring eco-design rules, which will directly affect the market access to the EU. It will bring minimum recycled content requirements, and this is actually closely followed by us, given the increasing value of waste as a raw material. And also we know that eco-design rules for sustainable regulation has been adopted in June 2024, and it involves development of eco-design rules, product-based eco-design rules. And as the Commission has adopted a working plan, and in that working plan there are certain calendar, which products are prioritized and in which calendar. For instance, we always talk about CBAM for sector, but there are circular economy rules coming up for those products too. In steel sector, 2026 is the aim. In aluminium, 2027 is the aim. And there are aims to increase the develop, for instance, green certificate for steel, to combine these policies with public procurement policies of the EU. Of course, maybe it's also important to mention here is a circular economy is also really important for the use of secondary material, and we see a tendency for the EU to keep the secondary material for itself and restrict the shipment of waste. Of course, certain type of waste should not flow freely to prevent environmental concerns, but certain type of waste, like steel scrap, is a raw material for steel industry, which is directly affecting the carbon emission reduction, almost 75%. And our, for instance, steel sector is highly dependent on electric arc furnaces and providing those steel scrap from the EU. So in that perspective, we also, of course, follow the EU policies and trying to keep dialogue on those policies. And of course, shape our national policies in order to mitigate those negative effects and support our sectors for their decarbonization efforts. And last but not least, maybe it's also important to mention here is since all the legislation concerning circular economy is directly affecting the customs union, in most of the regulation, we have initiated efforts to align with those legislations. So the final aim is actually to align with the EU legislation to keep the free movement of goods. Thank you.
we thank you. I think in the audiences, there are several reliefs that because we all believe that there will be no fragmentation between the EU regulations and our national regulations to keep the momentum between the trade volume. But as you mentioned, the circular economy is a new industry action, and where I see in several discussions, yes, we have the R&D colleagues who made the prototype, but still facing challenges to start off the production, even the regulations are already there. So in that kind of times, we need to keep the optimism, and that's why I would like to give the floor to Rachel, because we need to have the inspiration from the true, real stories, because in the international climate initiative, it is where I understand the science and the policies interfaces with each other. So can you tell us about how German experience, how Germans' lessons learned shape you, and can you give us some insights from there?
Definitely, thank you. And I'm looking forward to using my own words this time. When we talk about industrial decarbonization, Germany's experience has really shown that it's a challenge. That's not why it's not called hard to abate for it's called hard to abate for a reason. And there is no single fix, but really takes a mix of measures and policies. And in Germany, what we have seen so far is success really looking at a mix of policy, markets, and international cooperation. Kind of starting on the policy aspect, similar to the trends we see globally, greenhouse gas emissions from the industry sector in Germany are about 1/3. And that's mainly from steel, cement, and chemicals, similar to what we already heard here today. And those are really the backbone of our economy, and they're very hard to abate, the emissions from those sectors. Some of the technology is there, but a lot of it is not quite there yet, which is, I think Andreas' story really showed us quite clearly the challenge that we come up against. You can only go so far with energy efficiency mechanisms and other methods if the basic materials are not green yet. You can't really move on from that, which is why we have, of course, from the policy side, we use a mix of instruments. In Germany, the EU emissions trading system, of course, is at the heart of that, carbon pricing, sending the appropriate signal. That has been complemented by the German government with a program called Carbon Contracts for Difference, which is used to help manufacturing companies kind of bridge the gap when they are implementing new technology, and then more specific funding mechanisms. But funding and technology is not enough. And I think also, again, here, Andreas's the story that he showed from EOT really shows it comes down to the markets. If the companies don't feel secure and don't know that they have a market for their product, there's only so far they will be willing to go. Although I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate EOT on the courage that it took from the story that you showed. Being a first mover is not the norm. That is truly an exception. But that is where we see the role also of policy in Germany to provide those signals to the market as much as we can and to support. And that led the Ministry of Economic Affairs to develop what's called a green lead markets concept that was adopted last year in Germany, where the focus is on finding common ground with regard to standards and definitions and certificates around products so that there is more clarity in the market. A prime example is then the LESS certificate that came out of that for green steel in Germany, the low emission steel, sustainable steel, so that buyers on the market know that products are green and can have something to rely on. All of that framing, all of that enabling environment still needs to happen in a lot of places so that we can provide clarity, security, trust in the markets. But that doesn't stop at national borders. which is why the third element that I mentioned, international cooperation, is so important here, particularly for if we're looking at sectors like steel, which is a very global market. And Germany has put a lot of work in the last couple of years into building cooperative platforms to work with governments, but also with other actors in the field to address this challenge. A couple of examples would be our work in the Industrial Decarbonization Initiative, which is led by UNIDO and was founded by Germany, the UK, Canada, and a couple of other countries. In the Industrial Deep Decarbonization Initiative, also known as IDDI by some, we have committed to a certain level of green procurement. So it's connected to a green procurement pledge, which was an attempt to provide a signal to the market that there will be buyers for basic green materials. Next to the IDDI, Germany launched the Climate Club 2 years ago now, where also Turkey is a very active member, and we're very grateful to have them together with 44 other countries. It's an intergovernmental platform that is dedicated exactly to discussing these topics of industrial decarbonization. How can it be accelerated? What types of collaboration, but also understanding, need to exist on an international level? At the Climate Club, we're focusing on discussing the challenge of carbon leakage. Even here, it's not simple because you have to first make sure everyone's talking about the same thing. And that might seem quite basic, but there's still a lot of variation there. And here again, thank you to our colleagues from the Turkish government who are very active in the Climate Club together with the UK. They have been able, this year, just in New York, at the Climate Week in New York, they presented a list of common principles on carbon leakage. So what are the principles on defining carbon leakage that all members of the Climate Club have agreed on? And that's a big achievement. Even though it seems like such a small step, those are the ones you need to take on an international level to get to markets that are reliable and that we have trust in. And of course, I would be amiss if I didn't mention the work that the International Climate Initiative, or ICI, is also doing in this field with our finance program. We are funding projects that to help our partner countries and to cooperate with them, among other things, to prepare for the challenges connected to the changing market. And here in Turkey, we are currently exploring the possibility of collaboration with the GIZ on how we can support the government here and the companies here to prepare for CBAM and to be ready for it. So these are just a couple of the different measures that we take, and without all of them, we won't get to the point, I think, where you have clear signals and security for the companies.
Thank you very much. I believe once now Neşen Hanım will explain about their current project, because I know that at Guidehouse you are also providing some consultancy, guiding those kind of projects. Could you please give some real examples, real projects? It would be very helpful for us.
With pleasure. Thanks, Gözde Hanım, and thanks my co-panelists for really preparing the ground. I'd like to focus on the implementation projects that we're conducting, and mostly under the International Climate Initiative and Mitigation Action Facility, which are both German government funds together with British government in the case of Mitigation Action Facility. So we have a couple of projects going on in Turkey. Some of them are their own early stages. Some of them are coming towards their end of life. But there are some insights that we can share that are relevant for multiple sectors and that could be really transferred from one to the other. So first, I'd like to actually start with recapping the problem at hand. In the industry decarbonization, what we're facing is not inventing new technologies, but really figuring out the best technology fit for the sector, for the company conditions, that is also aligned with national strategies, which also provides financially viable solutions, obviously. And meeting all these at the same time is quite a complex puzzle. I sometimes think it as playing chess with your eyes closed, because that's usually the decision-making situation that companies need to make. There's a lot of uncertainties, and sometimes your chessboard is highly related to someone else's chessboard, and you don't know what their next move is. So what I find is projects like International Climate Initiative and Mitigation Action Facility gives us tools to try to eliminate some of these uncertainties and maybe get the bind behind in front of your eyes in some cases. We know there are some challenges that are quite common for many of the industries, and the first one is, as Andreas has been mentioning prominently, is costs. And decarbonizing industry or taking any measures is a very high cost investment with very slow returns. It's not cheap, for example, to have hydrogen-ready furnaces or to implement a CCUS unit takes really hundreds of millions investment. And especially if there is regulatory uncertainty, the investment decisions are delayed or more in doubt. I also would like to congratulate Andreas, because it's clearly there's a clear governance in the company that took these risks on and has been looking forward, but not all companies have the same capability to deal with the complex environment and the decision matrix that they have to go through. So one of the toolboxes within International Climate Initiative, but mostly in Mitigation Action Facility project, is to create blended finance instruments. In a project that we will hopefully start in Turkey in decarbonizing cement industry, Mitigation Action Facility will be providing direct finance to industry players to start working on some of these projects or the initial steps of these projects together with demonstrations. This creates, this shows that climate finance and also brings in other investors to see that there is some momentum. For example, the Turkey Industry Decarbonization Investment Platform, TIDIP, from EBRD and from other multilateral institutions are already showing that there is an interest to follow up from these initial steps that we can provide with Mitigation Action Facility or programs that are like. But obviously, finance doesn't solve all the problems, although it does solve most of the problems, I must say. There's also a need for policy clarity, which Elif Hanım mentioned. And we know that the Turkish government is putting a lot of effort in preparing the regulations, but there's also a huge amount of work still to be done. And again, with IKI and MAF projects, we have the possibility to work on certain aspects of this regulation development, make ministries come together and align on certain aspects together. So sometimes create that missing tissue and create a platform for cooperation between industry and government. So maybe the second option, the second barrier, challenge that I would like to talk about is to create the first example. So first mover risk is a risk that industry knows very well. And to eliminate those, we work on demonstration projects. I think almost in all IKI projects that we are implementing in Guidehouse, we have a component of technology demonstration or innovation sprints, which gives opportunity to showcase that there are technological solutions which are also economically feasible and which gives opportunity to not to mitigate all risks, but provide more clarity on how these risks can be managed by all the actors. So we have provided this demonstration project one of the oldest IKI projects called CoolUp, which is which works on cooling sector, which is a manufacturing heavy sector, which Turkey is also exporting to Europe and to Middle East. So it's also creating not only examples for Turkey, but also for the region that is around. obviously demonstrations are not enough, and to scale them up, we need to have policies and certain mechanisms in place. And in this cement project that is upcoming for implementation, hopefully in 2026, we'll be looking into options like developing industrial clusters which can use, which can provide multiple players to share the infrastructure or benefit from the high investment upfront. So developing different business models. So not only leaving demos where they are, but also creating how this could be scaled up or maybe even replicated in other sectors will be at the core of the Mitigation Action Facility cement project that we will implement. Well, lastly, one of the main barriers that we see is the fact that industry decarbonization and power sector infrastructural transformation has to go hand in hand. It's great to have PV panels on roof, but there is a point that we have to decarbonize the energy system as well. Because we can't decarbonize still with green hydrogen, only we have to invest in renewables at the same time, and integrating those in a resilient way needs policy development but capacity development as well. And one project that we're implementing, I think it's in second year now in Turkey, is called MENELinks, which is specifically working on sector coupling and integration of renewable energy into electricity grid in Turkey. So it takes Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Industry to work in a cohesive way. And I think one of the unique specialities of IKI project is to create this platform, the binding tissue, not only between the ministries, but also between the finance and industry, because navigating sustainability, navigating energy transformation in this fragmented way of the economy does function is quite challenging, and there must be incentives that bring those actors together and make them act together. And I think that's what we see in these initiatives. And they're also an example of how Turkish-German cooperation and mutual understanding from the very high level, which we've seen earlier in this session, comes to really ground and really on tangible implementation projects that helps Turkish government to meet its climate targets, but also increases the competitiveness of the industry and private sector. So really exciting to see more to come. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, nothing to me to say, I think, after you, because I mean, it's obvious that several companies like the AOT or several industry companies, now we are doing, I believe, at first, in early years, low-hanging fruits. I mean, solar panel is one of the key demonstration projects for that, and several so on and so forth. But as you mentioned, yes, we need the finance for sure, because all the shareholders are looking for the cost and competitiveness and predictable regulations for sure. But more than that, the collaboration, and we need to more hear about the good true stories. I think as AHK, it is our maybe duty to provide a platform to at least listen not only the challenges but the best practices, good parts. So as far as I understand from all your perspectives, that this is not only the engineering issue, this is rather the governance and the competitiveness. So if I may ask your final remarks in only one sentence, if you prefer to say, because still we will have time before the coffee break. I'm sure our audience will be very happy to hear.
Yeah, one thing. I spoke about the hurdles we have still in our way until net zero. And it costs money, yes, and CBAM will cost money. But this is in steps. Yeah, it does not happen overnight. It takes until 2034 until the full financial impact is there. And my hope is till then, we are going to have so much motivation to find new technologies or improve technologies that we will, at least on the technical side, overcome the problems until then. We just shortly heard about reuse of materials, scrap, for example. Big deal in metal, in steel. Big deal. And we are using a lot in Turkey. There are technical restrictions. Up to a certain amount you can do that. And that, of course, is perfect. It's the best way to save CO2 emission is by use the material again. Don't produce it again. And now the demand is getting so high that the material, the scrap, became rare. Happens already. Is that something we would like to have? No. But it shows that the people, just by the pressure, start to think about how to reuse again. So it's also a huge psychological effect behind.
Yeah, maybe as last words, I think we need to move away from thinking sustainability or climate targets as compliance exercise, and to really accept the fact that this is a competitiveness model. This is a business decision, this is a finance decision, and not only even that, it's a decision to make about the resilience of your business, resilience of your country, and future-proofing everything you do from today to 10 years, 30 years' time. I think if we can really make this accepted and in our DNAs, every decision that will have to be made will be much more easier to see pros and cons and what we have at stake. Thank you so much.
What I can say is actually, as also the Green Deal policies of the EU foresees, in this period, the green transition periods need to be taken as a holistic approach, where different policies should support each other. It's not only about climate change mitigation goals, but this is a new economic model which is recently accepted explicitly by the EU. This is a competitiveness model where you transform your economy in the direction of green production, but you also need to keep competitive. So this is also important, and Green Deal Action Plan and Green Deal policies of Turkey aims to achieve that, where different policies of our country support each other. We aim to update our action plan in line with the recent developments. And maybe I forgot to mention, but we also, Kaan Bey will mention, we will develop our own ETS where we will use the revenues for the green transition of our industry. And of course, we also aim to establish our own CBAM in order to prevent carbon leakage within the perspective of ETS. So these all should support each other, and we aim to go in that direction.
I want to address, I think, a little bit the elephant still in the room, funding and finance. Several of my panelists here have mentioned it, and we heard funding doesn't solve all the challenges, but a lot of them. And I would argue finance and funding is one of the challenges in this field. It's unfortunate that Meshthed isn't here anymore, because I get to quote another OECD study. Last year, on the behest of the Climate Club, the OECD did a mapping of financial assistance going specifically to industrial decarbonization projects in emerging and developing economies around the world. And that study showed very clearly that there is a massive gap. We need to increase funding by, the number was 3 to 5 times the current amount to address all of the decarbonization projects that we need to see in emerging and developing economies. At the same time, also, as we heard this morning from our panelists, we need to see a lot more alignment, and funding is a challenge, which means we need to take the time to be smart about how we are funding and bring in other players and actors to the table to support that. there is a lot of activity going on right now, but it can be better coordinated, it can be more targeted, and it can be smarter. This is another challenge that we are trying to address. In the lead up to COP this year, Germany has initiated a working group on financial assistance for industry projects in emerging and developing economies, together with the UK and Brazil and also Turkey, which we're very happy that they're again helping us with this problem. But not only have we brought governments to the table at this working group, there are also multilateral development banks, there are philanthropies and the private sector. And we're having conversations about which role can each of these actors play in the financing landscape. Where can public entities put their money, where do philanthropies put their money, so that we really see a complementary impact of the financial flows going on. We don't have all the solutions yet, but we're working on it, and I'm quite optimistic that we were even able to bring these many actors to the table, and it's really been quite a large group. We will be bringing out a statement at COP, so keep your eyes open for that. And we're hoping to really lay out at least a couple of clear action items for how we can structure finance across all of these players to maybe not fill the gap, but at least close it a little.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I think the keynotes would be that this is, yes, funding is crucial, but we need to have the mindset change, includes the customer behavior, and no doubt to say that this is a pure collaboration issue between the industry, policymakers, and the decision makers and the leaders. And we see that there are tremendous ambitious colleagues within the companies. As leaders, I believe our role to give space to voice their ideas. So, from the timing wise, I think we are very good, very sharp. A couple of minutes left. If you have final remarks or any final questions, I don't know. Oh, but first I need to align with my panelists. Please go. I think so.
As a student at Matthew and starting to study synthetic biology in Bilkent University, and later moved to Germany to deal with synthetic biology in TU Darmstadt, I would like to put this term: synthetic biology will be very significant for the next industrial revolution. We are all of us surrounded with astronomical numbers of bacteria around us, and we do engineer themselves on purpose, like wastewater management and etc. It's significant to hear the term synthetic biology. That is my contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe I can comment on it, because I mean, in last 10 years I was dealing with the sales colleagues, but nowadays dealing with the R&D colleagues, because they have tremendous ideas like that, the synthetic biology for the water treatment, and also shifting the plastic to domestic waste. So it's glad that you are here, and just keep on working, because we as companies need those ideas.
Thank you. We all mentioned what will be the tool. This tool will be that, the synthetic biology for the next revolution in industrial biotechnology, I think, and in general. Like we may able to manufacture new fabrics, new staining materials, and all the material engineering thanks to those developments in that area.
Yeah.
Thank you to all the panelists. I mean, it was really, really insightful and very inspiring. Thank you. My question would be a general. I mean, I'm a lawyer and working with the private industry on basically on their ESG goals, and I guess Neslihan mentioned the term playing chess blindfolded. That was referring to governments, more or less, but the same goes for companies as well, obviously. What would be your suggestion, or yeah, your suggestion for companies, and this goes to all panelists basically. How could they live up to these challenges? Because, I mean, it is a transforming world. It's the biggest industrial change of our transformation of our lifetime. But also the whole economy is changing. I mean, Andreas mentioned his perspective on the automotive sector. I guess the same goes for many different sectors as well. And it would be interesting to hear your point on that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's a million-dollar question. I will not have an answer for it. But yes, it is the situation for private sector and countries for sure. And one thing we can all do is to really try to leave short-term ambitions or short-term criteria as much as possible. I know it's easier said than done. But really thinking on long terms and looking around for cooperation is the only solution I think we can get out of this. And yesterday there was actually an inspiring talk we had where in Ukraine, for example, everything is now demolished and they are building from scratch. And the decisions they are taking is not to build what they had in fossil fuels or to build what they had but more cheaper, but it's really thinking about far future and now doing the right thing. Because it's the moment now. It's not different for any other country. We don't need to have everything demolished to start making the right decisions, but it is truly nothing to underestimate, and it's really complex. So I hope someone in the room maybe has an answer. So thank you.
I don't have an answer for companies, but I do see a role here also for policy and an appel on governments. This is back to the point that I was making before, where international cooperation is so important to reduce the load, to decrease the challenge for companies. We need to see harmonization, harmonization, harmonization. We heard it this morning as well with regard to the taxonomy, but it goes beyond that. It goes to standards, it goes to definitions, it goes to carbon metrics. It's great that there's a lot of pieces moving on the board right now, but we need to move them together in a harmonized manner to reduce the load on companies.
I think we are also out of time. I had the signal, so once again, thank you very much. It's been very fruitful discussions, and it's an honor to moderate this panel. I hope our audience also found it in that way. Thank you very much for your patience and your explanations.
Thank you to our moderator and all our speakers from this insightful discussion. Please stay on the stage for a moment as we will be presenting your certificate. I would like to invite our President Bige Yücel to present the certificates. We will now have a short coffee break before our second panel. Please be back by 4:30. Dear guests, welcome back to our last panel will dive into carbon markets, a key tool for driving decarbonization and linking policy ambition with practical action. Dear moderator and the panelists, the floor is yours.
I think we follow the Christians. Is this according to this?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mühtan Sağlam from TEPAV. It's a pleasure for me to moderate this panel as the panel 3, the carbon markets in action, policy, industry, and finance. Today we will keep the discussion practical current status TRA ETS, its alignment with the CBAM, and what industry needs to execute and how public and the blended finance can scale the investments at pace. As all you know, in July 2025, Turkey's first climate law entered the force, creating the legal basis for a national emission trading system, with a pilot phase expected in 2026. That is, timing is not incidental. Actually, I believe that all you know that it's coincidence with the EU CBAM moving from reporting to actual charge to imports. This shift we are discussing today is therefore not just from voluntary offset to compliance. It is competitiveness question for Turkish industry, a financing question for transition. Before the start the panel, I firstly want to introduce our speakers to you. Mr. Eyüp Kağan Moralı, Head of the Carbon Pricing Department at the Directorate of Climate Change, who leads the Turkey's ETS design and CBAM coordination. And Ms. Canan Ergün Tavukçu, Director of Government and Social Affairs of Arçelik, representing the industrial perspectives of carbon pricing and innovation. Dr. Christian Hanks, the Program Director of IKI, Policy Interference Turkey, connecting the International Climate Corporation with Turkey's national implementation. Christian Valero, the Acting Head of Sector of Global Connectivity, Inclusiveness, Growth and Green Development at EU Delegation of Turkey, offering the EU's perspective on remarks, linkage and financing. All welcome. I want to start with a little bit. I will ask you each a question. Then the second tour, I will again ask you the second question. I want to start with Eyüp Kağan Moralı. Mr. Moralı, Turkey is finalizing ETS rulebook, and first I wondered that which design choice suggests cap trajectory, MRV stringency, market stability instrument do you see as the most critical to ensure environmental integrity and industrial competitiveness, especially under the CBAM framework?
First of all, thank you very much for your question. Yes, as Turkey, as Directorate of Climate Change, we are in a way to develop our own Turkish emission trading system, and in this regard, currently, in the past and today, we are making too many important studies, especially for the ETS design, also conducting some special meetings with all industrial organizations from each sectors under emission trading system. In Turkey, of course, for the emission trading system, we have like under Paris Agreement, all countries have some target according to their national circumstances. And in this regard, as Turkey, we know, we submit our national determined contribution. And in this NDC target, one of the important instruments is the Turkish emission trading system. It is written in our newly submitted NDC also. In this regard, also by considering our own national circumstances, we have to focus on the especially CBAM and the mitigation target at the same time. This is one of the important two parameters of the Turkish emission trading system, and of course at the same time our target is to follow the environmental integrity, and at the same time we have to focus the sustainability of our industrial sectors and the electricity production target. In this regard, for the cap setting, we choose an intensity-based target in our Turkish emission trading system. This is different from the EU emission trading system cap setting methodology. Here, our main target, the focus on the product emissions intensity, because we will implement a benchmarking methodology while distributing, while allocating the allowances to the ETS installations. We choose a benchmarking system, and we will choose a benchmark line. In the left side of the benchmark line, the best performing installations will be in this in the left side. The other installations who has the more emission intensity than benchmark level, this will be the right side in our emission trading system. And when we identify a benchmark, the companies, installations in the left side of this curve, of this graph, will be a seller in the market. And therefore, we will give opportunity to them to get benefits from their previous investments, climate-friendly investments. But for the right side, these installations have to buy some allowances from them in order to surrender their emissions according to our monitoring, reporting, and verification system. Here, what we are targeting is that not making a pressure to the production level, activity levels, but at the same time, we are focusing by considering the CBAM requirements. We are also focusing the GHG emission targets at the same time. As I said, this is one of our important design parameters, is the intensity-based cap for cap setting methodology. For the allocation of the allowances, we choose the benchmarking system, not grant parenting system. But in the past, we are focusing on the grant parenting system. But after the CBAM and after our internal discussions with the industry, to make an effective system and to make a demand supply for best fitted system, we choose this benchmarking system for the allocation methodology for our in our ETS system. Of course, at the same time, these benchmark levels is very important for us because in the past our reporting requirements in MRV, you ask MRV stringency, MRV is based on our on emission reports. But with the emission trading system, we will focus on the activity level data, and we will collect monitoring methodology plan like the EU ETS system from our installations. And at the beginning, our target is to start a pilot phase, and then our target to start with the real implementation phase of the Turkish emission trading system. In the pilot phase, we will focus on the CBAM sectors only. Electricity, steel, iron steel sector, aluminium, and cement sectors will be in the target. This brings us to around 169 installations will be in the in ETS as a compliance entity at the beginning. With the starting of the ETS phase, with the all installations, here we have a threshold. I forgot to say this. In our MRV system, we are following the all electricity and industry installations with an Annex 1, similar to the EU ETS directive. But in our Turkish emission trading system, we will focus on the installations whose emissions is higher than the 50,000 carbon dioxide equivalent installations. In MRV, we are following around 800 installations, but in the pilot phase, there will be only 169 installations in the pilot phase. And in the ETS phase, since we have put a threshold as 50,000 carbon dioxide equivalent for each installations, there will be 382 installations will be in the target, but other installations whose emissions lower than the 50,000 carbon dioxide equivalent, they will of course continue to monitor, report and verify their emissions together with all ETS installations. Also we have some targets in climate law, especially this for the CBAM issues to diminish the or to decrease our emissions intensity of the products. But this brings us to a bit a financial issue. Maybe in the second turn I will give some information about that. Okay, thank you.
And now we actually have a little bit idea about the Turkish ETS system. Thank you very much, Mr. Moralı, for your contribution to help us understand what will we see in our near future. Now I want to a little bit learn to private sector's perspective. Canan Ergün Tavukçu, could you help us to a little bit understand, as Moralı also a little bit summarize what will happen in near future for Turkey's climate target? What is the general perspective of private sectors about this general happening?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to reflect our views in terms of private sector. I'm working in home appliance industry. Actually, our industry is not a part of ETS, but we are one of the most important user sectors, downstream sectors, that using these primary goods like steel in our production efforts. ETS is establishing a Turkish ETS is certainly is important, not only from a climate commitment, but also it's a competitiveness tool from our view. As private sector, I would like to highlight some critical aspects that we find important. This is one of them is timing. As Kaan Bey mentioned, CBAM is a critical instrument that is also an important aspect that use the design of Turkish ETS. We know that it will be fully operational as of 2026, and the financial obligation will start as of 2027. And we know that the free allowances will also gradually decrease and fully phase out as 2034. 2030 is an important year that there will be a dramatic decrease in the free allowances, nearly cumulative 50%. So our exporters need to be ready as soon as possible in terms of reporting, and capacity building is needed in that respect as soon as possible. The initiation of the pilot phase will be also important, and also the effective phase it will be important. On top of that, also Berrak Hanım has mentioned, the EU is considering to expand its CBAM to downstream goods. At Brussels, there are many downstream industries that pointing out that the current asymmetrical structure of the CBAM, just focusing on primary goods, are affecting negatively of the downstream goods, since the finished goods will not be applied to CBAM. So the products coming from the outside EU will will have much competitive advantage in that regard. And also in some sectors like us, steel imports constitute nearly 20% of the cost structure. So that's huge. And if the carbonization lags in the primary goods like steel, there will be a cost shift to downstream goods. And inevitably to the consumers. So here also the Turkish exporters need to be prepared for this both capacity building and decarbonization efforts. One issue is also structural alignment. Kaan Bey also has mentioned avoiding fragmentation will be critical for the private sector. Extra cost and bureaucracy should be avoided in that regard. The methodology, the structural methodology should be aligned with the EU. And also we are considering to have our Turkish ETS in the coming period. So if all these structures will be aligned, that will be critical for also our data to be recognized by the EU. This will be critical since CBAM sectors constitute nearly 50% of our exports to EU. But when we also consider the other downstream industries like machinery, home appliance, and automotive, this percentage rise high. So with the decrease of the free allowances and also the CBAM expansion, the risk can be high for Turkey. Up until now, there had been some impact assessments in that regard that has only considering the primary sectors. But we should be also ready for any kind of expansion in that regard. Predictability will be also critical. Industry also asks for a market-based carbon price signal. Since we know that NDCs is also under consideration, so an interim target and a peak year will be critical for also industries to plan their long-term investments. That will be also critical. Revenue allocation, hopefully in the climate law we know that the revenues of the ETS will be allocated to the green investments. Here and transparent and outcome-based support mechanisms will be critical. Any kind of fiscal tools that removing taxes from the green products, energy efficiency products, and also tax incentives for the professionals working in green transition areas, but also promote this decarbonization efforts. And surely cooperation with the EU in all these framework will be critical, since we all know that there are many gray areas in terms of CBAM, like the deduction of the carbon price paid in the third country, the methodology and verification systems, verification bodies are still unknown. So there need to be consultation mechanisms, and we are glad to hear that here our Turkish Trade Ministry is in cooperation with the Commission and also our Environment Ministry. I can pause here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution to help us the general perspective for private sector. Now I want to a little bit turn to international cooperation dimension. It is also one of the important points, I believe, that during this transition period for Turkey and all the other countries. So Christian Hanks, I want to ask you a question now. Mr. Hanks, could you help me a little bit, could you help us, to, according to your international experience, first, which institutional capacity do you see the most urgent for Turkey's ETS readiness? MRV, register system, or market oversight?
Yeah, thank you very much for managing this panel, and to my co-speakers here on this panel. It's a great topic, and before I come to the specifics of your questions, let me re-underline and stress the situation that we are in. We had it in some of the panels before. We are not talking about any kind of technological innovation or an introduction of a new regulation or law. It's a huge transformation we are talking about. This is really, in my life, probably unique in changing economies, and this is where we are. And with the relevant challenges, first of all, stability and predictability. If companies take decisions which are relevant for the next decade or two, this needs to predict what kind of markets are we having 10 years later, what is the competition situation, who else is in the market, how do the markets look like, what are the consumer preferences, and so on and so forth. So this is, I think, very strategic, very fundamental, and that's what many companies are struggling with, even big ones, I would say, but small ones by all means. The same applies for governments, for example. How is the overall political situation evolving? In what geopolitical context are we navigating it? What are the markets of tomorrow? Are they continue to develop like this? Will we have a homogeneous CO2 free market, or do we have disaggregated markets? And what market would I like to participate in? This is a question that drives companies, but also governments in their decision of alliances and market priorities. If it comes to research and development, it is the same thing. What kind of products, what kind of innovations do we need over the next time? What investments do we undertake? Public and private research. So now coming to your question, specifically on ETS. Where are we, from my overview, from my few experiences here, where are we in Turkey? First of all, a number of requirements have been fulfilled already. And I think the year 2025 was extraordinarily important, since the German government, the Turkish government has laid down the legislative requirements and preconditions for everything else. It is the climate law, which opens the door to everything we are doing now in terms of bylaws and regulations. Secondly, the Turkish government, especially the DUCC, which we work with, was well prepared for this. So it was not now ETS coming or something, but it was now we can really act, we can really work on bylaws, we can move ahead. So this is happening. The same applies for green taxonomy. The same applies for the introduction of a climate, we would call it in Germany, Klima- und Transformationsfonds, Climate and Transformation Fund, how to use revenues later on for reinvesting it in green transformation. Another thing that makes Turkey's role or situation quite strong is that over the last 10 years, with the leadership of the DUCC and support by IKI and GIZ, we have established a monitoring, reporting and verification system which is in use. And I don't have to tell you, you know that takes a long time. And it's working, and this is a huge advantage compared to many other countries, even in the neighborhood, which have nothing like this in place. So this is crucial. It's not the final step, as Kaan Bey said. Right now, we have to change the data system from an installation-based data collection to a product-based data collection. Thus, we are working together with the DUCC right now on doing exactly this kind of work. So this is another aspect we work in. Green taxonomy, I mentioned already, we work also on a concrete study and work with the DUCC. Then we have an ETS. And I think, I don't know, we plan with a 2 years introductory phase of the ETS. I think that's necessary. So we will have probably deal with free allocations to companies, but it needs time to get this machinery running, the reporting and verification. So I think also CBAM is pressing now a lot, but I think it takes time, and it's very complex that you can collect all these data and manage the data and institutional capacity. You need well-functioning data and IT architecture around this, and the data governance. Who has access to what kind of data? What about confidentiality of data? I mean, we talk also about competitors and how do we deal with it? Who ensures that the data are saved, and who ensures what kind of data are reported to whom? So this is also very complex. And I think there are still some miles to go, and this will keep us busy for the next years to come. That would be my prediction. Everything, it was also mentioned before, defragmenting. I mean, if it comes to CBAM, if it comes to trade, if it comes to innovation, a number of government entities and businesses are involved. So this kind of co-creation and finding solutions that really meets the demands of market actors, that needs a different level of collaboration between different ministries, for example, or association with businesses and so on. I think here we are on a good way, but I think it's not just in Turkey, it's everywhere, but in Turkey it's too. So we have some work to do here. Maybe a special aspect that is very often mentioned in the connection with CBAM are the smaller industries, SME sector. For sure, the first movers will be big, probably transnational companies. But what happens to other actors, not the small ones, but what impact does it have on the whole supply chain? So the integration within supply chains, development capacity and institutions to organize this collaboration are necessary. So here I'm not talking just about DOCC, I'm talking about what is needed, what capacity, institutional capacities we do need to compete and to turn the burden of these requirements into a competitive advantage along the line that was presented today by the OECD. I mean, you have to, if you want to be benefit from it, you have to be ahead and you have to organize yourself. CBAM now is pushing it hard because you keep the money in the country, you don't want to spend it in the European Union, so we need this functioning ETS system here. And but I think in the medium term it should be expanded to other sectors more than CBAM. And for me, the whole carbon pricing issue is another important driver towards sustainability. You heard it also in the previous panel. If you talk to some of the companies, we just had a delegation visiting some German companies, they will say, yes, now at CO2 we have issues with social issues, we have water, overall environmental issues. So what we do is actually whatever comes, we try to combine it and comply. We are getting ready for a future market which requires all kinds of aspects of sustainability. So here we heard much more sustainability as a topic, and then you have specific compliance or requirements for different purposes. Maybe I end here for the time being and hand over back to you. Thank you very much.
We will we will continue to our discussion at second round. Now let's a little bit learn the EU perspective about this issue. Mr. Bolero, my question is to you. First, let's start with what is the key milestone would you demonstrate regularity convergence between Turkey's ETS and EU ETS? And do you foresee a credibility pathway for future market linkage?
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me here with all these distinguished panelists. Certainly, this is not an easy question, and especially because after all the other colleagues, I think they already mentioned quite several elements. But let me start indeed for addressing your question with an element. You mentioned that since July there is the Turkish climate law in force, and actually before touching upon the regulatory convergence, I would like to have a different approach to see, okay, but first it's a question of convergence of vision. And convergence of vision implies then convergence of objectives, which are indeed framed by the regulation, and also convergence in terms of actions or activities. And interestingly enough, during this panel and even the previous one, I heard several times the words competitiveness, challenges or opportunities in particular, but I didn't hear that much the word climate or environmental protection, for example, which is interesting actually, because this is exactly the kind of convergence in the vision. You know very well the European Green Deal was the first tool to really change this paradigm, to move from seeing climate and environment as a cost, and for companies, circular economy is the same, and transforming this cost into opportunities. This is certainly not an easy change of paradigm. Actually, is a sort of revolution, if you think. I'm old enough to remember that this isn't really a totally different way of looking at things. And the very positive element, so the first element is that I see that Turkey shares the same vision. We have the same objective for climate neutrality. And then it's a question of objectives and how to operationalize this vision. And this is exactly about this climate law. Allow me also to mention that 1st of October there was high-level dialogue between Minister Kurum and EU Commissioner on climate, which also another sign of this kind of shared common vision and willingness to work, to talk together and to look forward to the same challenges at the end. I think it was mentioned already, for example, to a large extent this Turkish climate law is a very important achievement, and we congratulate, and I have also a bit proud of it, because as EU delegation in Turkey, we are also supporting with our funding under the instrument for pre-accession, the colleague from the ministry, we have put in place several investments in this case, and by the way, we have also an upcoming technical assistance for 2.8 million exactly with Canvey and the ministry to really increase the harmonization with the EU ETS. So elements are already, several elements are there. MRV system was mentioned also thanks to the GIZ support, of course. But still there are other elements that would still require more work, more sort of mutual understanding and more cooperation, I would say. It was mentioned the benchmarking for sure. Benchmarking is an element which would require further, let's say, fine-tuning, understanding. It's an approach which is I would say it's a pivotal element of this, because depending on how you put your benchmark, the system can be totally different framed. The other element, I think several mentioned already, the use of revenues, for example. And here I would like to put an example what's in the EU. You maybe are familiar with this EU Innovation Fund, which mobilized 1 billion on innovative technologies to address climate neutrality, which is a very important element, and it's also very close to what I think is the real engine of all that, is about stimulating innovation. Because when you want to have competitiveness, certainly all these market-based instruments are helpful, because they put the companies in competition, they force a bit innovation, but the spillover, which is less visible, is indeed in this additional capacity in the system, in the Turkish system and in the companies as well, to have more innovation, more technological advancement, which in the end, regardless of whether you have to address environmental constraint or not, is a competitive edge in the market. And if you see about the numbers of clean tech for the future, I think that whatever is your business area, you will look into that very carefully. And in fact, we have also in the EU have also the Horizon Europe program, to which Turkey is also eligible, by the way, which put additional 600 million euros exactly for these technologies. So to use these revenues in this way, to put it, in my view, in this frame, I would say it is certainly something that I think the colleagues in the East are already looking, I think, and it's something that would require a careful understanding, including, for example, the very good news of the just transition. We hear that this is an element which is introduced, very, very interesting, actually. And I think there is also this 10% already foreseen to have this revenues used for that. This would be very interesting, and from the EU side, I think there is openness. By the way, as a result of the high-level dialogue, there are working groups. It was mentioned in the previous panel, the working group on CBAM, because indeed all this is still an evolving, let's say, discussion and dialogue, but equally important, the working group on carbon pricing, I would say. And the last point, maybe it was mentioned indeed that the approach on intensity-based is a bit different from what is the EU ETS. This is an area which maybe further discussion, further mutual understanding would be nice, or to understand whether in perspective, maybe to the sort of medium term, there is any chance to move to the cap and trade, and to probably have this fixed cap as well as is the EU ETS approach. But overall, allow me to finish also, because it was mentioned already that when we talk about ETS or CBAM, this is a sort of push-pull type of policy at the end. Certainly, it is or it could be seen as sort of challenge for the companies, and it is. I mean, I fully acknowledge that it has this component. At the same time, what's happening in the EU, for example, that we have added to the European Green Deal the clean industrial deal. You see, it's an evolution. And the keywords, once again, is competitiveness. And the keywords now is the new circular economy package. Once again, the focus is, let's keep this consistency in terms of regulatory analysis, what Christian mentioned before, which is essential to give the right signals to the companies and to the market that this is coming. But let's see this also in terms of opportunities, not only for the first movers, because of course first movers probably they are even more flexible stakeholders that they will reap the benefit. But let's look at the system and the systemic innovation, systemic change in the Turkish case, which it was mentioned in the previous panel, has already a very intertwined system with let's think about value chains with the EU member states. This is exactly the kind of competitive edge that working together, having the same vision and working together on the same actions, also with the EU support, this is what we are trying, I think can really complete the elements that are probably not finalized now, but it would certainly and hopefully will be an important driver for what is the real objective of this, which is creating economic development which is sustainable, but at the same time bringing real benefit to the economy and to people afterwards.
Thank you. Now I want to start the second round for a question. However, because of the time limit, there will be just 5 minutes for each question. Mr. Morola, again, I want to start with you. Actually, this is I believe that many people ask themselves and talk each other about this question. How will fair allocation and auction revenues be structural balance, fairness, and with efficiency, ensuring revenues are transparently used for decarbonization or green transition investments rather than absorbed into general budget.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, here for the allocation of allowances, as you said, there are two options. One is auctioning, the other is the free allocation. And the revenues will be generated via auctioning. If we give 100 free allocation to all emissions, this means that there will be no revenues for state budget, state special budget. In the climate law, also in the pilot phase, our main target is to give 100% free allowances for the emissions. This is the pilot phase. And of course, in the near future, we will conduct a carbon market board meeting. And in this carbon market board meeting, we will exactly give a decision. The carbon market board will give a decision regarding this percentage, and according to this percentage, we will try to prepare our rules of modalities for the first pilot phase of the emission trading system. Here, in any case, in the free allocation case, as I explained in the first round, there is a revenue for the low emitters. If you have produced a product with a low intensity, low GHG intensity, you have still a revenue, but you are taking this revenue from others in the market. This is according to the supply and demand target. This is the case. But if we reduce the free allocation, then there will be revenue in the market. And in the climate law, there is a special cases, Article 12 and 13 of the climate law focuses directly only these revenues. And according to the climate law, these revenues will be directly 100% used for the green transition purpose of Turkey. And this is most of the specific case of the climate law, because climate law secures the funding of the green transition, and all revenues addressed as a special revenues, not in the general budget. It will be stored in special budget. Therefore, we will use these revenues for our green transition purposes only. Also, regarding the revenues, also one of the critical issue here is the just transition issue. Up to 10% of these revenues will be used for just transition purposes, because with the climate policies, there will be some affected groups, affected sectors in the end. Therefore, in the climate law, this is a special case. In our climate law, there is a funding opportunity for the up to 10% of the revenues will be used for the just transition purposes. Also, to put these revenues in a fair way, now we are working as a Turkish green taxonomy. I don't know, maybe in the previous panels it will be discussed, it was discussed or not. Here we are, as Director of Climate Change, we are working on a Turkish green taxonomy regulation, and in this taxonomy we will address what is green for this budget from our address in the climate law. Of course, this is a difficult case, because there are too many parameters, environmental parameters, performance indicators in the green taxonomy. It is very difficult to directly report, monitor, and address, verify all of this data. But in the Turkish green taxonomy, there will be such a way, and we will, when we develop this, all financial institutions, IFIs, will respect and use these taxonomy results. But in any case, for the participants, I have to raise that in the emission trading system, whether there is free allowances or whether there are revenues or not, we are only focusing on for the carbon pricing to put a pressure for this marginal abatement costs. If the carbon price exists the company's abatement cost, then it becomes economically rational, feasible to make an investment. Of course, and this is the main point. And in this point, to existence of the finance, to existence of the technology is important for any increase in the carbon price. And we are always cost, but for Turkey, the main parameter is the maybe technology transfer, finance transfer, and the establishment of the climate investments is very important for the and using these carbon revenues for this transformation is very important for us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now let's again look to private sectors view. Now I want to ask, actually, maybe the other panelists also underline the competitiveness is also an issue when we're talking about the private sector. So Ms. Tokçu, what is the rule or tools to protect competitiveness under the new condition as ETS and the Turkish green transition process?
Thank you very much. In fact, as already mentioned, currently EU is also considering to recalibrate its industry transformation and industry policy framework in terms of competitiveness area. Surely there are some structural challenges that industries are facing, like supply chain disruptions, increased energy costs, and all geopolitical tensions, the trade wars and tariff wars, and all these challenging environment, industries trying to preserve its competitiveness. EU is currently taking some initiatives like in Clean Industrial Deal or Omnibus regulation to simplify and streamline the regulations and the needs, the requirements of the industries, mainly not to going a negative way in terms of climate change, but to decrease the bureaucracy and the cost. In that regard, I would like to point out an issue in terms of trade perspective that, in fact, all these regulations should be in coherence with each other. For instance, the latest steel safeguard measure that's announced by the Commission, it is not approved yet, but there is a huge, there will be a huge impact on the industries, particularly downstream industries, since the quotas will be dramatically decreased and the new tariff is 50%. For me, there is an inconsistency between CBAM and this steel safeguard, since if you are going to provide green steel from outside Europe, you are, in that case, again applied a steel safeguard. And I think this should be addressed in a much coherent way in the coming period. And the other issue that is widely discussed is the local content and in Made in EU branding. I think Turkey should be an integral part of all these discussions, since as our industries, we have a very integrated supply chains. For instance, for our industry, in terms of volume base, we are the number one in Europe and second after China, and so we are providing, for instance, for our, I'm working in Arçelik, and we are providing many components and parts from also Turkey to our manufacturing facilities in the EU and vice versa. So that's a critical issue and should be handled in a proper way, I guess, since this competence should be inclusive, and I believe that Turkey will be a reliable partner in the context that EU is considering its strategic autonomy and competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tokçu. A little bit help us to what we will face and how it is ready for competitiveness to our sectors. And now I want to continue with Dr. Hanks again. My question is that how project-based initiatives and pilot programs be better linked to a national ETS signals so that the pilot scales into systemic abatement rather than remaining isolated examples?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. And yesterday we had an ICI internal meeting where we talked about exactly this question. And first of all, as I said earlier on, it's a transformation happening over many, many years to come. And here we are not talking about projects. We talk about topics. We talk about ETS. We shouldn't talk about ETS projects. We talk about CBAM. We talk about use of ETS revenues and so on. So these are topics and themes and not projects. Project-based initiatives now, that's the way, let's say, donors do deliver their products. So it's a time frame, it's a budget, it is a certain topic, and you support with these ingredients an ongoing transformation process. So this kind of understanding should be guiding us. So we have to stop talking about projects if it comes to operations. And here, first key requirement is government leadership. We need government action plans, strategies, clear strategic decision where we are heading for, and then integrating any kind of project into it shouldn't be a problem. And in the ideal case, all these projects are planned super together with all partners and everything is super fine. The reality is many things are good, and on the way implementing the projects, we have to readjust this what actually is happening and what we are doing quite well, what we trying to do quite well. And another way of improving the impact of project-based initiatives is, for example, having something like the International Climate Initiatives, by saying we are not delivering every now and then here and there projects, but we are partnering with selected priority countries for a number of years, many years to come. And in this context, we agree on a certain project, on a certain deep dives into topics. So here you create a kind of a long-term alliance and a kind of consistency between support measures. Yesterday, the ICI coordination meeting, that's exactly what we were brainstorming on how to make this better and also align better with country priorities. I give you just one small example. We were talking about the use of ETS revenues, for example. Right now, we work with CAM-based department and others on options. We did together with EY, by the way, since I see you, to develop what are good available practices globally, internationally, what options would we have and what does fit best in the Turkish institutional ecosystem, what is the best way that would help Turkish better. Here, this thinking didn't start with the beginning of this project or doesn't end there. It will be a government effort of the next year to come. Just as a maybe practical example. And then I would like hand over to you and then to Christian.
Yeah, thank you very much for this strategic view. Now I want to again continue with the EU perspective. Mr. Valerio, could you help us to understand which EU financial instruments, blending, guarantees or technical assistance could most rapidly support industrial decarbonization and SME compliance under the CBAM?
Yeah, indeed, normally when it's about finance, you ask your opinion on that. Jokes apart, I think it's certainly this is an essential key question. Although I would say that to really have this transition happens, I don't think finance is the most sort of problematic issue. First, it's a question of creating the conditions. And this is what's happening, this is the work that is already ongoing. Regarding the financial instruments, well, first and foremost, what we are doing as EU delegation in Turkey, as you know, we have this instrument for pre-accession under IPA. We have already put several billions actually, on different phases. In the current one, we are supporting, including the support to the colleagues in the ministry to really create the framework, the conditions to make this happen. And supporting several bits and pieces, if you want, of the system. For example, it was mentioned before the work with the STDIP, the EBRD discussions, and for example, we are also considering whether to support this or not. In the sense, these instruments, that this funding that is available already for Turkey is already more or less supporting the Ministry of the industry to really improve and modernize. So certainly the issue of technology transfer and innovation, I think, is the key to make this happen. In addition to this, in addition to the IPA funds, we have created other sources. I think you are maybe aware of the Turkish investment platform, which is funded under the so-called EFSD+, which is the European Fund for Sustainable Development, is a platform where mainly there are guarantees for private sector, so to really attract private investments there. Most of the IFIs, EBRD, IFC and the others, they are part already signed with the guarantee agreements in place. I acknowledge that this kind of financial innovative financial tools, they require a bit more of capacity buildings to the final, let's say, beneficiaries, to the companies, to really better understand which is the edge for them, which is the interest to really have this. And to this extent, I think we are also looking about some technical assistance. So to accompany all this instrument with dedicated technical assistance to financial intermediaries, but also targeting, let's say, the private investment in particular. I think this is something which is already there, is already in place. In addition, I mentioned before the research and innovation program Horizon Europe that is available also for Turkish institutions. TÜBİTAK is very active, but many companies already. And I think if you look in particular, as I said before, in what is the real interesting part, the interesting part probably is about this innovation element there. And in Turkey you have a lot of elements that maybe are not mature yet, but there's a huge potential. If you think the very ambitious target for renewables, for example, the initial works on green hydrogen, and if you think that maybe for decarbonization, so also for the steel industry to have a direct reduction with green hydrogen, you see in Turkey there are a number of elements that are potentially there. So the question is really to create this system, and once the opportunity is there because of the framework, then finance, I'm convinced, is not necessarily the bottleneck there. Of course there are other elements which goes beyond, like macroeconomic element, but from the financial tools, I think there is already quite a large number of elements there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I want to thank to all our speakers for their contribution to help us this crucial process. Now I believe that actually our time is ended, but maybe just 5 minutes we can extend for contribution and the question. So please state your name and organization and mention which speaker you direct your question. So is there a question or contribution at our salon? This is good, which means everybody understands everything. Sorry, where? Please.
Hello, thank you for the presentations and speeches. I am Bahadır Sarcan from the Amber organization. My question is to Eyüp Kağan Bey. How do you plan to determine the emission intensity for the electricity sector? let's say other sectors could be easy, like for example emission intensity for per ton of steel could be easy, but regarding electricity generation it could be hard. Like in Turkey we have lignite plants, we have natural gas plants and many others. How do you do benchmarking methodology? How do you plan to manage this? And what could be the emission cap? Like, let's say, could it be the average of every lignite plants, or top 20% or worst 20%? How do you proceed for this? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. In general, in the last panels, there were no questions in general case, but thanks for your question regarding the electricity. Yes, also electricity is easier than the products for us. Because here in the past we made some meeting with the Minister of Energy. Here also, you know, in the EU ETS there is no benchmark for the electricity production, since there is no free allowances for this sector. Here we focused on the source of the coal. For example, for the coal in Turkish in Turkey, or the coal in the exported for the imported coal, and for the natural gas. According to our studies, we will give different benchmark levels for them. Not one product, one benchmark for electricity sector. This is what our working for now. Therefore, when we make a division for them, there will be different benchmark levels for each production according to the type of according to the source of the source of the power, source of the mining area. It changes according to the mining area. Yeah.
Is there any question? We have just 2 minutes. Maybe, yes, please.
As far as I read in our upcoming NDC, we offered to make a decrease in the amount of increase we do on our carbon emission. How do we plan to have the road to net zero if we don't do any absolute decrease in our carbon emission?
And your question too? I believe not me. Thank you for not asking me. To Kambe.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, actually this is a road to net zero. Not for example, in our NDC we give only target for 2035. But this target will be updated each 5 years at the end. And as I said in the second tour questions, I said that existence of finance and in the existence of technology give some address to the future carbon pricing. Since now we are beginning of the way, and since as Turkey we give a target in our NDC, therefore we put an intensity-based target. But this does not mean that according to the current draft ETS also regulation, it is written like that. But according to the circumstances in the future, available of technology, the availability of the finance, it may be changed in the future. But currently, our strategy focus on this way, and because we are focusing and we are in ETS currently, we are addressing the low intensity production. If the low intensity production number of the increased and the technologies increased, this brings us at the end our net zero target. But of course, when we considered the 30 years ago what we were doing, and when we considered the 30 years in 2053 target, every technologies, everything can be changed. Therefore, currently, as I said, we focus on the low intensity production.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your question. Because of the limit of time, our panel is closing. I want to thank you all your good question, and of course thank you to our distinguished panelists. They shared their insight with us.
Thank you to our moderator and all our speakers for this
certificate.
insightful discussion. So, I would like to invite Johannes Draikonigen to present the certificates. So thank you very much to all today's moderators, speakers and guests for your valuable contribution.